Welcome to Difference Talks, the show that focuses on one word, differentiation, and how it is more important today than ever to discover what makes your brand unique and celebrate it with the most important people, your team.
In each episode, we meet people who've had the courage to stand up and stand out, sometimes against great odds. In a world of copies, conformity, and commodities, uniqueness speaks volumes. Difference Talks.
Hello, everybody. I am Barry LeBove. I am the author of The Power of Differentiation and the founder of LeBove Marketing, Communications, and Training. With me is my partner and co-owner, Marcus McMillan, who is creative director. Today, our guest is David Mandell, and he's going to talk about some very, very innovative adventures he's had. He is the co-founder with a few of his friends of the Whiskey House of Kentucky. And you may go, well, I don't know if I've ever had their bourbon or whatever. Well, you probably have. You just didn't know that it was produced, distilled there. So he's going to talk about that. He's going to talk about culture. He's going to talk about facing the challenges of doing a transformative job, starting various companies. So David, welcome to Difference Talks. Why don't you share a little bit about your background?
Well, thank you. And thank you both for having me. Really appreciate it. And it's an honor to be on the show. My background is a pretty traditional one. I grew up in Philadelphia. I went to school in St. Louis, undergrad at Washington University, and then I came back to Temple University for law school. And it was funny, we were talking in the lead up to this. What got me to come back there was my father said we get season tickets together at the Eagles. So starting back in 1996, we did that, and we've had them ever since. And of course, we had a great victory this past weekend. Just had to get that in there.
Had to do it. Fly, Eagles, fly.
You got it. That's right. And so, out of law school, I went to law school because honestly, like many kids, I didn't know what to do. I was a history major and an English minor. And it's funny, I look at my kids right now and they say, what should I be doing when I get older? And so, honestly, my advice there, you have no idea. You have no idea. And in so many ways, my experience and my life has been one of, process of elimination, certainly early on, figuring out what you don't like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then knowing you don't want to do that and then trying something different. And I went to law school after watching O.J. Simpson and the trial in college. I think, this is interesting, right? I'd like this. And so that's really kind of what led me in that path. And I had great experience in law school. And I started practicing law at a firm called Blank Rome in Philadelphia, which did a lot of things. Started as a litigation associate, and as part of that, we worked with Governor Ridge, and I ended up with a background in election law fraud at that time, and was sent down to Florida, and I was an attorney for George W. Bush on the recount, which again, it was in my early 20s.
That's pretty cool.
Was not political.
Yeah.
I was given 3 counties. Doing the military ballot arguments, which was a little part of that fight that very few people knew about, but came back and the chairman of the firm said, you want to work at the White House? Like, what do I know about that? Sure. And this was pre 9/11. And I ended up being introduced to the woman who became chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board. So we went in right after 9/11. And she headed up that agency. And then a year later, she was appointed head of the FAA. And I went over as chief of staff. And I was the youngest chief of staff, apparently in history there. But that was an amazing experience, an amazing challenge. And then from there, we were out, and it's kind of funny, like how all these things come around, and the events of today. But we were meeting with Elon Musk in 2002 in LA because he had just started SpaceX, and the FAA regulates suborbital flight, and he had a lot of complaints about the FAA at that time too. So a lot of what he's saying now is, we heard a lot of it then, and so it's very funny. But anyway, we at the end of the day, I met up with my college roommate, Dan Lind, and we were drinking Red Bull and vodka at the Sky Bar in LA at 1:30 in the morning. And we said, like, what are we doing? We're trying to make a cocktail that doesn't make us tired. Why can't we just make alcohol that doesn't make us tired?
Mm.
It's like a great idea.
Yeah.
And in fact, maybe it's the greatest idea of all time. And so we, left, worked on it nights and weekends, and we launched the first caffeinated alcohol, which was caffeinated vodka, in 2006 out of a 2-bedroom apartment on the Lower East Side of New York. And that was our entree into the world of spirits, which set us, on a path that, again, it's like one of those things when you look back at your life, like who would have ever thought? I never thought I was going to go into business. And it was, the next several years, it was a remarkable experience. We did a lot. We built that brand from nothing to 45 states and 5 international markets. It ultimately was not a success for many reasons, including the fact that Four Loko, which was you may be young enough to remember.
Oh yeah.
I'm not accusing you of drinking it.
Nope, you're fine. I may have a couple, occasions, maybe even in New York City. So
yes, but Four Loko was what really created the end of caffeine and alcohol. And so we had sold the product at that time. We had a nice tail, which was lopped off on the sale of that. And after that, we got into whiskey shortly thereafter, doing a couple of different projects, which led us ultimately then to start Bardstown Bourbon Company, and came out to Kentucky in 2013. Dan moved at that time. He was in London with his family. They moved to Kentucky from England, and we started Bardstown Bourbon Company, which is a whole, other experience. And we can talk about all these things. And then, Bardstown Bourbon Company, we created, a transformative model there. We're the first to do, create a Napa Valley style destination experience right here on the Bourbon Trail. But the true engine behind that business was custom whiskey production. And that we were the first to do it, and we built that program. We sold that business in 2022, and then we founded a whiskey house shortly thereafter. And it was myself, Dan, and the COO of Bardstown Bourbon Company, with the goal of then taking what we were doing on the custom whiskey production side to the next level.
Yeah, David, there's a few points in there that I think are really powerful. Like you were talking about kind of some transition moments. I just hit the word of pivot, these pivot points. I mean, talk a little bit about what happened in your path where you hit something, and maybe it was a mentor that was talking to you, a friend, a colleague that was like, okay, let's do something different. Like you said, you're meeting in the apartments, like, what are we doing with our life, right? Let's do something different. Talk about those moments, because I think those are really special.
I remember when I became chief of staff of the FAA, was I ready for that? Like, no, there's no chance. And so I remember being like terrified. When we went in, there's an organization of 100,000 people. I was 28 years old.
Wow.
Everybody that reported to me was my dad's age. I didn't know anything about anything in aviation. I had a year at the NTSB. But, my chairman of the law firm at the time said to me, we got together for lunch, and he said, are you afraid? I said, yes. He's like, you're terrified, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. He said, that's good. He said, you should feel that way all the time, because it's going to make you work harder. Keep your mouth shut. Listen. Speak when it is necessary. And he said, if you do that and keep that insecurity inside of you, not only don't have to show it, but that's going to drive you to be better. I thought that was really good advice, because I felt that way at every step of my career when we did these things, or we went into these new businesses, or we went into these areas. And that's important.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone from hanging chads in Florida to FAA to whiskey production, which is crazy. I think what you said that's really powerful is, yes, you were afraid and you opened up to your mentor, but I think admitting that you're afraid and understanding that, hey, I'm nervous, is actually a good thing. A lot of times I think we look at somebody who's successful and go, he or she, they don't feel any of this. They're a completely different breed. But, the most successful people are nervous. The most successful people fear the potential of failure. And like you said, that drives them. It drives them to perform.
I think that's right. And I think it led me to kind of the next stage, in life and realization is like, ultimately, I think you figure out what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Mm.
And then
Yeah.
you surround yourself with the people that can. Like, for example, I know exactly what my weaknesses are, right?
Mhm.
I've got a great CFO, as you can tell. That'll tell you that right there.
Right. I got it.
I
Yeah.
have a phenomenal COO and
Mhm.
president in John Hargrove, who is the president and COO of here. He was the COO of Bardstown Bourbon Company. I had recruited him. He was the master distiller at Barton Brands when we brought him over. And young guy, but was, as a background in advanced manufacturing, came out of advanced food manufacturing into distilling, and then I recruited him. But as an incredible operational talent. Far better than I would ever be. And Dan Lind, who is our chief strategic advisor now, other partner and business owner, has been, was CFO here. We ultimately had to bring in a CFO full time just to be on the ground here, but he plays a strategic financial role. He's still in London, but he was CFO for me at Bardstown and co-owner, and same at the vodka company. But and what I've been really lucky with has been able to have these relationships and partnerships and be able to bring people together. We're at the point now where we can all, not only can we complete each other's sentences, but Dan has a tremendous handle on the finances. John has the operations, and it really allows me from a strategic standpoint. For me, I do a lot here of kind of the larger kind of, not only can understanding the strategy of where we are headed, setting the vision. I spend a tremendous amount of time with culture in the business, obviously drive all of the sales and a lot of the sales relationships and the relationships with our customers. But so like, I think, over time you realize what you're not good at, what you're good at. You're not afraid to surround yourself with absolutely the best people. And I think my advice for people getting into business and as they go through business is to realize that you do not have to know everything to be successful in business. You just have to be able to put the right people together to help you.
What did it take for you to either guide others, to motivate others to stay on this path for the time being, right? Until you change course and went a different direction, another very successful direction, right? What was it that you did or you brought to the table to help move them, on that course?
It's kind of seeing above just kind of the day-to-day, things that you're dealing with, and knowing here's where we're headed. This is where we want to go. This is the vision for the business. Here's how we're going to arrive there. And then obviously you're working through every day the challenges, because if you're starting a business, every single day is a challenge, right? Every single day. And people understanding that it is a firefight every day, in many ways, no matter how stable the business is in the early years. It's just something you're always dealing with. And it's part of the fun of it. It's also part of the challenge of it.
When we come back from break, what we're going to talk about is the Whiskey House of Kentucky. What is it? Because you're going to share the story behind it. It is also a very highly innovative company. And many of us might go, well, bourbon, whiskey, innovation, what's that really mean? And I want you to really dig into that. So when we get back, we're going to learn more about that. And we're going to talk more to David Mandell. You're on Difference Talks. See you in a few moments.
You're listening to the Difference Talks podcast. Difference Talks is brought to you by LeBeau Marketing Communications and Training. LeBeau focuses on one word: differentiation.
In fact, we wrote the book on it, called The Power of Differentiation. Our goal is to inspire 1 million people with this message, helping brands win hearts, minds, and market share.
Discover more at LeBeau.com.
Welcome, everybody. We're back with David Mandell. We're going to talk about Whiskey House of Kentucky. David, share what makes it unique. The audience may not know much about it now. They will in the future. It was a very, very bold undertaking, which really underscores how important your culture is. So, David, take it away.
Thank you, guys. So Whiskey House is now the most advanced distillery in the country. We do nothing but custom whiskey production for a very exclusive group of brands. And these are many brands that people will know. Some of them we can talk about, some of them we can't. They do production with us in a facility that is the first in the world, first custom whiskey production facility in the world. It's actually designed from scratch to do custom whiskey production, applying the principles of advanced manufacturing, really what you see in advanced food manufacturing, to an industry where distilleries are typically, quite old, particularly in the bourbon side of things, or quite historic and, are put together over the years in a piecemeal fashion. This is a state-of-the-art facility, and it is closed to the public because we focus all of our attention on our customers. So there are we don't have any brands of our own. There are no conflicts of interest. We focus everything here with our team, and it is, what we call the best team in American whiskey. We focus all of our attention working with our customers to create really differentiated, highly differentiated whiskeys and liquid here. And of course, we do the production, we do the aging, we'll be doing the bottling soon here. So kind of full life cycle. And all of this is built on a technological platform where we capture data from every aspect of manufacturing. We use it to automate our processes because we're a fully automated facility. We also provide that data to our customers so they can tell deep, rich stories. And now that we collect more data than any other distillery in the world, this is the place of thought leadership where we'll be bringing the industry together to be able to do experiments in whiskey. When you start running AI across these massive data sets, you start looking at things that nobody's ever really looked at before. And we can talk about some of these, but it's a transformational business in many ways in our segment of the market. And we are a real leader, very quickly becoming a real leader in the distilling side of the business.
I mean, what was it that you pointed at? It's like, wait a minute, there is something in the industry that we need to capture here and do something different with. I mean, what was that thing that came to you?
We said, there's actually a real problem in the industry that needs to be solved right now. And it was that moment that set us on the path to produce whiskey, to create Whiskey House. And we said, again, we could have, when we sold Bardstown, I mean, it was one of those moments in life we could have gone and done something else. We could have done nothing for a while. I mean, we didn't really have to do anything. And the reason that we got back into it is the same reason that I like, what we do, which is creating something transformational. We weren't going to come back into the business or start a business just to be in business. Well, in its own way, Pink Vodka was very unique and kind of transformational in a sense. So we were creating a new category. Bardstown Bourbon Company was transformational. And now Whiskey House is really transformational, particularly in this segment of our market, in the contract whiskey market. And so that was the inspiration. That's what's driving us. And, a lot of it, you can see that and you can feel it in the spirit of everybody here. It's the innovation side of the business and being able to kind of lead from both a industry standpoint, a thought leadership standpoint, an innovation standpoint, that's driving all of us.
Well, can you get into more depth on the technology and the AI component? Because many of us are bourbon lovers, but there would be a natural disconnect to say, well, gee, there must be great technology in this bourbon. And share with us what you're doing there, because, and one word I want to really underscore for our audience is transformational, which you've talked about. That is so critical because we're not out there ideally to just sell a product. We're there to improve lives or to improve an industry. And that's what you're doing. So how does AI fit into this? And it maybe, David, it goes wider. Maybe it's also the research and the data, but it sounds fascinating.
We have very exclusive customers. We produce for 3 of the largest spirits companies in the world, some great craft distilleries. With the largest spirits companies in the world, we'll do innovation for them. We'll do excess production. We'll do things where it's not easy for them to do it at their facility. So you can come here and we'll create it. We can test it. We can scale it. You've got other great brands that have never had their own distilleries. They're called, what in the industry are called, non-distilling producers. Right. So they had other people distill for them. There's a whole segment of the industry where this goes on. We've got a couple of great international customers, that need bulk whiskey that's produced and sent overseas. So it's used in RTDs, it's used in private label products in Europe. There's a lot to the industry, but so that's our business set. Those are the people the companies that we produce for. And what's really needed for those people, those companies, innovation is a huge piece. So you've got quality, so exceptional quality and stuff. I mean, on a level that, what we created here, because we had the ability to create this whole system from scratch. Innovation. So what does it take to create really innovative liquid? Well, you need to be able to have in one facility a tremendous amount of flexibility, right? So that you can I'll put it this way. So I think we all probably know this, or if you don't, I mean, there's a reason for it. The big guys produce the best liquid, and I say liquid whiskey, for the lowest cost. Why is that? Like, we oftentimes think, craft distilling has this allure and they're making really neat artisanal. Not really necessarily true. Not in whiskey. In beer, yes. Like the big guys, the craft brewers were able to do stuff because it's not as complicated in distilling. The reason you get great quality liquid from running a massive system with a great team, basically flat out. This is how it's done. Right. So you'll run 1 or 2 mash bills. That's the recipe.
Right.
You run it for a long period of time and you're getting great consistency and great quality. Where it becomes the challenge is, how do you run multiple different mash bills through that system and can maintain the quality? And so at Bardstown, the system we created there was very rudimentary. We didn't have a lot of capital. We bootstrapped that business. What we created day one was a very basic system that we attempted to upgrade, and we add this on, we add that on. And when you're done at the end of the day, you're adding like a patchwork of things, and you end up really with 3 different distilleries running 3 different systems and all of this stuff. Not that we didn't make it work, but when you get to start all over and you say, okay, wait a minute, let's do this. So what we created here solves some really big engineering challenges, but we're able to run multiple different mash bills through a massive system, which is what it is. You're getting the quality from a massive system, you're getting consistency from a massive system, and you're getting this tremendous flexibility. So we can go down to running 100 barrels at a time. It's still a lot of whiskey, small for like custom.
Right.
With 33,000 gallon fermenters, they're 3 stories high. We get 100 barrels out of them, but we can run those through. And where the technology comes in many areas, but one area is we're able to keep consistency of pressures measured as the AI does this too across the board. So as we're running everything through, technology is keeping all the systems even, all the pressures even. It's adjusting, so you're getting great quality as you're running everything through this big system. That's one component of the engineering challenge, which allows us to have tremendous flexibility and then capabilities to create flavor profiles in the liquid that we would not be able to do in any other case out of one place. That's kind of one level of this.
Can you share, as you've gone through this journey, how you've learned from these other steps along the way, where you were involved with the voter fraud potential, FAA, all this? How did that make you who you are? How did that differentiate David Mandell?
What did I learn from going through law school? Well, and being a lawyer. Well, I learned a way of thinking. I learned a way of writing, but even more so, I learned a way of working that if you don't train yourself to work that hard, at that age, you're never going to learn it later. You're not going to be able to do it later in life. So, I was working in a massive law firm. You're working, billing 2,000 plus hours. You're working, 7 days a week. You're working 12, 14 hours a day, right? Okay.
Right.
You do that when you're young, like you're learning. It's like learning, you're like training for a marathon, right? So you're learning this. Then at NTSB, we learned crisis management. My first accident was there. Accident investigation there was basically less than a month after 9/11, a month and a half after 9/11, when Flight 587 went down in New York.
Yeah.
I was the first person on the scene from the NTSB for that. That's a whole nother story. So you go through that experience. And FAA, I mean, you name it. FAA was like, you're running a city. If something's going wrong, it's going wrong at any time. And you got a workforce of 100,000 people. You're running the air traffic system. like something's going wrong, always. And you're like learning how to manage that, and you're learning how to deal with that, and you're learning the challenges of it. And then, you're taking that experience. And then we built Pink Vodka, which was learning the independent beverage brand, like how to build an independent beverage brand in the spirits industry. You're also learning how to start a business. You're learning how to raise money. You're learning how to do all that. And then we took it to Bardstown and all those challenges there and what we learned, and then ultimately to Whiskey House. And so, it's been fascinating for me, and looking back, and I can now kind of pinpoint what I learned at every step of the way and how that has been, has helped. And I can do the same. My two business partners can do the same thing.
Talk a little bit about, I mean, you've mentioned culture too, and how you're, you kind of help guide culture, measure it. Definitely an advocate of a really great culture.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like the feel of these companies that you've helped to create and develop, and the experience of those companies have helped to create an incredible culture, right? That there's this substance, this amazing, you can almost feel what that experience is like at Whiskey House. You almost feel what it's like at Bardstown. It's something so substantial and special. What does that do to the culture? I would guess it makes it really special, but yeah, speak to that.
I spend now, and I have in the last couple of businesses, I've spent probably, I would say, somewhere in the range of 40% to 50% of my time building culture. That is something that, when you look at, the CEO level, it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's so important. And so what we've done at Whiskey House has been a kind of a culmination of what we have done at other, at other facilities. And so, I mean, when we built these other businesses, I'll give you some examples. So, and we got, again, it's like it's opportunity to do everything all over again. So with culture here, we talk about creating, a business that's absolutely first in class in customer service. Well, you don't get there unless you start with building that with the team and with the employees, and all of that. And so that is really, is really, really important. So we wrote mission, vision, values together with the first 12 employees when we were still in a trailer. We then, those values we used to hire the next, the next major group of employees. Ultimately, we have 67, people in the company right now, because it's a very automated company. But we live those values. We hired against those values, which are really important. Then, everybody that comes into the facility, everybody that joins our team gets a barrel of whiskey. We do a lot with our team from a communication standpoint. We're only 7 months old. We had the incoming class from MIT, Sloan School of Business, do their project with Whiskey House. They embedded themselves with us for 3 months, and they studied communication for us. And then they just wrote their whole project. They delivered a paper to us. We're implementing some of their things. It's great. We love that. It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
We brought them in. It was wonderful. It was great having the students in here with us. And so, communication is critical, in building culture, across every line. And it's something that, everybody gets it wrong. It's never going to be right. You got to keep working on it. So these are just certain examples, but I say all this by way of the amount of time that goes in building that, that culture in our team and with our employees, and taking care of them first, is what ultimately delivers these results that makes Bardstown a beautiful place to go to. That from an experience standpoint, that when our customers come in here to Whiskey House, they're kind of like blown away by what they see in terms of the level of knowledge that every employee at every level has about who they are, what they're making, how they address them, how we bring everybody together, how we work with them. I mean, it's how you win.
David, you get it. You've come home from a really great, thrilling day, and some folks will go home, they put their feet up, and they're tired and they're zoned out. But we're talking about a best day where you're thrilled, you're energized, you're excited about what's been accomplished in the day and the week and in the 6 months that the company's been moving. what is that best day like for you? What's that look like? What'd you experience and what are you doing?
I think, when you have those good days, you got to enjoy them. You got to share them. You got to celebrate them with your team. But you got to just plow ahead, and you got to know that, you're going to get to the end of the week and some disaster is going to happen.
Yep.
And you got to just deal with it, and you got to deal with it, and you've got to manage it. And you got to manage your perception of it.
Well, and I think what you said connects into, if you have a strong, positive culture, you're more likely to endure the inevitable difficulties.
Absolutely.
It's when you have the culture where you don't celebrate, you don't stop and say, now, wait a minute, what we just did is amazing. Let's stop. I'm not just giving information, I'm sharing it, and I'm celebrating it with all of you. And, it's what the author Seth Godin talks about in his book, Song of Significance, which is we have to feel that what we're doing is significant. Yeah, we have to. And that's what you just provided.
And on the flip side, also being transparent with everybody too when things aren't going well.
Right.
And when there are problems, because you're going to need everybody on the team to help solve the problem and get you out of it. So it's not going to be helpful either if things are not going well and you're not telling people, you're not being transparent, you're not telling people the truth. So, that doesn't mean that you have to tell everybody absolutely everything. There's certain things that you keep, within smaller groups. There's no question that you have to manage it. But at the end of the day, you've got to really be transparent with your team, because if you do run into a problem, they're going to be the best. That's going to be the best group to help solve it.
Yep.
As you said, you outwork, you share, your culture is something you focus on as a primary part of your day. Your everyday role as leader focuses around culture. So I want to thank you. Marcus and I have really enjoyed this.
Continued success. It was a real pleasure.
Well, thank you. Continued success with Whiskey House of Kentucky. The innovation that you've put in there, and the passion and the teamwork, working with that small group of co-founders and then building from it, is something that differentiates you. So everybody, this has been Difference Talks. We thank you. And please look into Whiskey House of Kentucky. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Difference Talks, produced by the amazing team at LaBeouf. All original music on this podcast was created by LaBeouf.
Buy our book, The Power of Differentiation, on Amazon. Have a question for the Difference Talks team? Email us at differencetalks@labeouf.com.